It's worth remembering the fact that cooked meat made us human beings who we are today, Homo sapiens. We don't know how and when the first primitive steak was cooked. More likely than not, raw meat accidentally fell into a fire and was roasted that way. Our ancestors liked the taste, and cooking became part of their routine. Consequently, the appearance of ancient man changed. For example, there was no longer a need for powerful jaws and large teeth. As a result, cooking also started the same process that occurs in our bodies during digestion when protein structures are destroyed. Then the size of the digestive tract decreased. People didn't have to spend so much time and energy digesting food. Instead, they had a chance to create tools, educate themselves, learn new things about the world, and so on. Therefore, the size of our brain began to increase. So ape became man, and the steak was a part of this transformation.
While Alexander was talking about the role meat played in human evolution, I came to this farm. Here, cattle are raised for beef. It may sound strange, but the preparation of steaks starts right here, in this meadow. Everything that happens here affects the end result: the breed of the animal, its lifestyle, and even its food. Timur, thank you for inviting us to your farm. Being around animals is rather exciting for us city dwellers. Are these all different breeds?
Yes, we have 7 breeds. 3 of them are dairy cattle. No, 4 are dairy cattle, and 3 are beef cattle, only for meat.
Can you show us which ones are beef and which ones are dairy cattle?
Next to you here is a Hereford bull. It is a striking example of beef cattle that produce marbled meat.
Beef cattle are different from dairy ones in physiological processes that occur within the animal's body. They aim at building muscle tissue and the maximum feed efficiency. Such breeds don't produce milk. They give it only to their calves. Dairy and beef cows differ visually as well. Beef cattle have a strong, muscular, and proportional physique. Their body is slightly elongated. The outlines resemble a rectangle, not only on the sides, but also from the top. The rear and front parts are equally developed. Beef cattle are larger in size, and they also have no developed udder.
The most important thing is for cattle to be in their natural environment. They don't experience stress. They walk outside. They aren't tired. They can eat when they want. They can eat whatever greens they choose. And consequently, this stress-free method of raising livestock leads to better quality beef. It improves it. I think it's time for me to intervene and explain the scientific nature of stress. First, some theory. When the body is stressed, 2 main hormones are secreted into the blood: adrenaline and cortisol. They affect almost all processes that occur in our bodies and launch a series of chemical transformations. They also affect the metabolism of sugar and acid-alkali balance. And now let's proceed to the practical side of things. Various organic acids accumulate in animal tissue during stress. The muscular structure then collapses, and the mineral composition of meat changes. To demonstrate this, I'm now going to drop a few drops of acid on a piece of meat, and we'll see what happens to it. The meat is getting lighter right before our eyes. Changes in the acidity of meat affect not only its color, but also the taste, structure, and the shelf life.
Coming up in the program, why do only happy cows produce high-quality steak? What is matured meat, and why do gourmet chefs love it? And why do meat delicacies often look so unattractive? Thank you, Alexander, but a lack of stress is just as important as what the cattle feeds on. If the diet is dominated by grass, the meat will have little or no fat.
When we use forage diets for our cattle, we put 5 to 8% of additives into them. I mean, these are either vegetables or grains. As a result, we get lean meat.
If the goal is to get fatty meat, the animal needs to eat foods high in carbohydrates, in other words, corn. This kind of fattening is necessary for the production of this delicacy, marbled meat, which is considered the most suitable for the preparation of steaks. We can get it from animals of a special breed that are genetically predisposed to accumulating fat layers between muscle fibers.
I think that the Angus, the Hereford, and the Russian Kamolaya are perfect breeds for steaks.
Why do you think they are perfect? The ratio between fat and protein?
Absolutely, yes. If we grow cattle in the right conditions and with the right diet, we'll get a perfect steak of marbled meat that the customer will want to buy.
Before butchering the meat, a few days or a week must pass. During this time, fermentation and a set of complex biochemical processes in so-called maturation will take place. They're aimed at the destruction of connective tissues under the influence of protein, that is, fermentation. This makes beef softer and tender. After the farm, I'm headed to a restaurant where first-class steaks are prepared. The chef treats the preparation of meat with special attention and seriousness. That's why I'm a little nervous about our meeting.
Meat is probably the hardest ingredient to master in the big world of cooking. This is because meat is a product that really depends on the way it is produced. And this is a very long process. Moreover, the method of cooking it itself requires serious concentration and precision. It requires always having the proper tools and a clear knowledge of the exact processes that occur inside the meat.
Ivan, hello.
Hello?
Thank you for inviting us today.
My pleasure.
As I can see, you've already set the table.
We always have a lot of meat.
Great. So we'll be coming to you often.
God willing.
I have a request for you, though. I would say even maybe a plea. I want to learn how to cook steak. I don't want it to become chewy. I want to cook tasty, juicy steaks.
It won't be easy.
Why?
Meat is the hardest discipline when it comes to preparing food, and, of course, it will require hard effort and you will have to spend a lot of time on it. In fact, in order to cook meat right, you must clearly understand what it is, where it came from, and only then can you choose the right technique to use.
The proper preparation of steak begins, first and foremost, with the choice of meat. Certain breeds of cattle are more suitable for this dish. As I learned at the farm, one of them is the Aberdeen Angus, or simply Angus. But not only Angus cattle can give marbled meat, any beef breed can do this.
Angus actually includes different variations of cuts. These are shoulder cuts of marbled meat.
So these are all pieces of black Angus. It is one and the same breed here. Why are the colors different then?
The thing is that we don't simply cook steak, just cut a piece off the shoulder and put it on the grill. We prepare it in a special way. We age meat, and here you can easily see the different stages of aging in separate steaks.
Steak aging, or maturation, before cooking is a gourmet chef's preference rather than a necessity. Over time, the taste of beef improves. You can compare it to some types of cheeses. Under the process of fermentation, proteins and fats break down into simpler components, which contributes to the emergence of new aromatic molecules.
The conditions required for the aging process are a temperature from 32 to 36 degrees and humidity of about 75%. Such low humidity is necessary for drying the surface while not allowing pathogenic organisms to develop on the meat's surface. Let's say the aging difference between these two pieces is 3 days. This steak is completely aged. It must be immediately cooked. You can't hold it off any longer. Katya, I take it your trip to the world of high-class meat cuisine has been successful. At least nothing's burning.
Yes, Alexander, I learned quite a lot. Like, you need to mature meat before cooking it.
So you mean to say that both steak and I need maturity, patience, and composure, do you?
Very funny. I mean to say that it's me who's going to teach you.
That's interesting.
So look, in order to make steak flavorful and delicious, you need to age it first. In other words, you need to give it some time to mature before cooking. And you can do this all at home. You can avoid getting bacteria and mold on the surface with the help of table salt. Season the steak with salt on both sides, just like this. First, you season the steak with salt, like I'm doing right now, on both sides.
That's right. Salt is a natural antibiotic. It literally sucks water out of microorganisms, thus drying them.
Okay, now I know how microbes die. By the way, salt pulls out water not only from bacteria, but also from the beef itself, which is perfect because we want to dry steak before cooking it.
I'm so proud of you, Katya.
Next, look, we put the steak on the grill, cover it with something on both sides, and put it in the refrigerator for a few days.
Great. What then?
I still have to learn what's next.
Fantastic. I will be following your progress very closely.
And so, we've learned that to make a good steak, which will surely satisfy anyone, meat should be aged for several days. But is it possible to prolong this period? And what will the meat turn into in a month? It seems to me that it's a piece of bone. Is it really steak still? Where's the meat?
This is actually a real gem. Maybe you just can't see that yet.
Not yet.
This is what we call truly matured meat.
So it's like a mammoth steak,
It's a bull steak from a fairly young bull.
but it's very tough, solid, like a rock.
It is on the outside.
To obtain meat from this fossilized piece of meat, I couldn't come up with a better synonym, which we're going to roast up later, we need a professional butcher to help us. Peter, thank you for being here today. It's actually the first time I'm standing so close to a professional butcher. I mean, it's your job to stand with a knife and cut these pieces of meat apart.
Well, basically, yes.
Okay, let's figure out what to do and how to cut this 40-day-old piece of granite.
Well, we can cut a steak out from it. Actually, if you were wondering what it is, this is a cut from the animal's back. Here you can see its spine. Vertebrae. Here are the ribs. If you imagine the animal, it's kind of like this position, like this. I mean, this is the top and here are the ribs.
So it's just like a small piece for the cook.
Yes, it's a really prime piece. It's the so-called ribeye steak. It is from the rib section.
Coming up in the program, what is the difference between ribeye and strip steaks? How not to get confused in the diversity of cuts names? And how is the fried meat crust similar to a fake tan? The whole carcass has about 10% of first-class meat. In other words, meat used for cooking steaks of the highest quality. Ribeye, strip steak, and filet mignon. But there are many more variations of this dish. You can cut out a steak from any part of the body. Muscles in the carcass differ in their functional uses and therefore in the structure and fibers as well. All this affects the taste of the finished dish. Since the tradition of cooking steaks and the meat industry itself originated in the United States, most of the names for the different steaks come from the English language. The ribeye steak is the most popular in the world. It's prepared from the rib section of the animal, and it's cut from 3 muscles. They all have a different texture and fat content. The strip steak is cut from the short loin from the back, and unlike ribeye, it contains a fat layer only on the perimeter of the piece. The flat iron steak comes from the shoulder blade. Its muscles have a rather dense texture, and in the middle there is a membrane which, in the course of preparation, completely softens. Filet mignon is the central part of the cow carcass. This is considered to be the tenderest and leanest of all steaks.
Of course, it is very useful to know where a particular steak has come from. You don't have to be a biologist to work with meat. You just need to be able to imagine how the body functions in general terms.
The job of a butcher, in contrast to an amateur cook, requires thorough knowledge of the anatomy of the animal. It's important to not only know the parts that are cut for a steak, but also the location of muscle fibers.
Since this is the back of the animal, it is arranged in this way. Along the entire spine, there is a muscle. It is the cut here. It is called longissimus dorsi, and
it's tasty?
it is one of the softest muscles, and of course, it is a delicious muscle. And because it is oblong, and is directed to the side, the fibers in it run perpendicular to the surface, which is what I cut.
In other words, we cut this piece of meat across the fibers.
Yes, I will cut a steak across the fibers. Now, why is this important? Because when the steak is finally cooked, the longest fibers will be equal to the thickness of the steak, and this steak is much easier to chew. If the fibers were going along, for example, like this, it would be harder for me to sink my teeth into it.
It looks like our perfect steak is ready for cooking, which means we're coming up to the finish line. We don't add any sauces, nothing like that for now.
No, we don't need any sauces. There's no point because the meat has enough flavor itself.
At first glance, it seems so simple. Put the beef in a frying pan or on the grill, and everything happens by itself. But it turns out I've just been distracted by the pleasant aroma of cooked food and fried crust that's taking place at a molecular level.
Well, there are many processes taking place simultaneously. Caramelization, fat melting, denaturation on the sides, and slow heating through the meat. Protein denaturation. Finally, we go back to where we started. All the processes that occur during the roasting of meat can be generally covered by the Maillard reaction, which has such a complex formula. From a chemistry standpoint, it's probably the key element of cooking. Every person encounters the Maillard reaction almost every day. The result of the Maillard reaction include the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, the crust on freshly baked bread and steak, the taste of fried dishes, and the color of milk if it has been exposed to heat for long periods of time. At the molecular level, the Maillard reaction is the reaction of simple sugars and protein. The process starts at a temperature of 100 to 200 degrees. Under these conditions, the sugars attack the amino acids, destroying their structure. Then there's a series of processes that are hard to observe. Intermediate products react with each other, forming a variety of organic substances called melanoidins. It is these substances that make fried food taste so delicious. We encounter the Maillard reaction not only in the kitchen. When we apply Sunless Tanning lotion, we can see the reaction's effects on the skin. The active ingredient in Sunless Tanners, dihydroxyetone, is obtained from sugar beets and sugar cane. It reacts with amino acids of skin keratin proteins. As a result, melanoidins, similar to the natural pigment of the skin, melanin, are formed, and the skin becomes darker. When I cook, I use this thermometer to measure the temperature inside. It's actually what I'm doing now. As you can see, the temperature inside is 66 degrees.
To cook a steak to medium, the temperature inside the piece should be around 140 degrees, but meat should be heated slowly. We should remove it from the fire from time to time, otherwise the steak will be raw inside and overdone on the outside. This is due to poor heat conductivity of meat.
I'll let the steak sit for about 5 to 7 minutes. It was 66 degrees inside, but now it's 88 degrees. That happened because its outside heated up very quickly initially.
So we've now reached the desired temperature for the inside of our steak. It means that our Supersteak from aged beef is ready. Well, Ivan, let's proceed to the most pleasant part of the show. We've cooked the steak, let's cut it and see what we've got inside.
The pleasant part is to taste it, but sure, let's cut the steak. I will cut the bone off carefully. Here's the meat, pink, red, and no blood.
But wait, in some restaurants, they would still call this a bloody steak.
A misleading name. We know for sure that there is no blood in the meat. Meat gets its red color from the pigment myoglobin, a protein which is found in the muscles. Its main function is to transport and store oxygen in case of shortages. There's actually no blood in meat. Its presence would be a flaw since it creates a favorable environment for bacteria to develop.
we've done all the hard steps now, we can try it, right?
Just don't rush, or you could choke on it. You know, there are some people who like to cut steak into tiny pieces and then toss them in their mouth like seeds.
So you advise us to savor the taste.
Exactly.
Little by little.
Bit by bit, gently, carefully. Well, how was it?
Amazing. You've done great work, and you also taught me how to make it myself. I don't know if I can do the same thing at home, but I'm going to finish this now. Honestly, it's just perfection.
It's okay.
It's okay? This is not the best result?
It's good enough. If we have a thermometer, that means we are already starting to think about how heat transfer occurs inside the meat, correct? We are already beginning to think about what occurs when a piece of meat and a hot surface contact one another. Therefore, we should think about making the surface as dry as possible, because otherwise, at the point of contact, there will be boiling, and it won't heat up to more than 200 degrees. Such a sensitive matter as food, and especially meat, which is really complex, deserves a thorough study.
Well, Alexander, let me present to you this sirloin steak of marbled beef. The degree of roasting is medium well. The temperature inside the piece is 150 degrees, measured by this special thermometer.
Thanks to this wonderful thermometer, the process of protein denaturation was successful. All proteins have become aroma macromolecules, not particles of ash.
Yes, the Maillard reaction was successful this time.
The Maillard reaction? Katya, I believe that soon you will be able to do more than just recall the contents of a chemistry textbook. You'll be able to write your own article, titled, for example, The Science of Cooking Supersteaks.
Yes, I think that soon I'll start writing my dissertation.
But still, it would only be fair if you included me as a co-author.
I'll think about doing that, but you have deserved a piece of my super steak.
I thought you'd never ask.
Help yourself.